My name is Matt, 43M. My wife, Sarah, 41F, and I have been together for over 20 years. We met when we were young, high school sweethearts, cliché as it sounds. For most of our marriage, we were solid. Life wasn't perfect, but we worked hard, laughed hard, and built a life together. We have two amazing kids, Jake, 9, and Lily, 6, who are the center of our universe. For the longest time, I thought Sarah and I could weather anything life threw at us. But looking back, I think I was naive. The first signs of trouble came 3 years ago. Sarah started drinking more than usual. It started off small, just a glass of wine here or there to unwind after a long day. But gradually, it turned into 2 glasses, then 3. Before I knew it, she was regularly polishing off a bottle of wine every night. I confronted her about it, and she brushed it off with a wave of her hand. "It's not a big deal, Matt. I'm not hurting anyone," she'd say, almost dismissively. I tried to let it go. I mean, who was I to judge? I smoke weed at night to relax after work, and I knew she needed her own way to decompress. But something about her drinking felt different, heavier. It wasn't just about relaxation. It felt like she was trying to escape something. Things escalated a few months later when I caught her using coke. I came home from work early one night and found her in the bathroom with her friend, Vanessa. There was no mistaking the scene. Lines of coke counter, and Sarah looked absolutely wired. I was furious. "What the hell is this, Sarah?" I shouted. She looked at me, wide-eyed, like a deer caught in headlights. She tried to play it off, saying it was a one-time thing. But I wasn't buying it. We had a massive fight that night. I told her that if she didn't stop using coke, I couldn't stay in the marriage. She promised me she'd quit and begged me not to give up on her. She said she needed me, that I was her rock. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But even then, a part of me knew this wasn't the last time we'd have this conversation. For the next year, we kept having the same arguments. I'd beg her to cut back on drinking or stop hanging out with Vanessa, and she'd accuse me of being controlling. One night, I made the mistake of suggesting that Vanessa was a bad influence. Sarah lost it. She turned the entire argument on me, accusing me of having an affair with my best friend, Erica. Let me be clear. I never had a physical affair with Erica, but Sarah wasn't entirely wrong to be suspicious. At the time, I was leaning on Erica a lot emotionally. She was someone I could talk to when Sarah was too drunk or too angry to listen. I realize now that I crossed a line, even if it wasn't physical. I guess you could call it an emotional affair, but I put a stop to it before it could go any further. I told Erica we needed boundaries, and she respected that. But Sarah didn't care about the details. To her, it was all the same. She called me a cheater and threw a wine glass at the wall. I couldn't take it anymore, so I packed a bag and went to stay at my mom's house for a few days. Those few days turned into 2 months because Sarah wouldn't let me come back. She said she needed space to figure things out, but it felt more like she was punishing me. Eventually, we started going to marriage counseling. For a while, it felt like things were getting better. Sarah was still drinking, but it was more controlled, just a glass or 2 at night instead of an entire bottle. Our communication improved, and I started to feel like maybe we had a shot at saving our marriage. But then she went on a trip to visit an old friend. When she came back, something was off. She was glued to her phone, texting constantly, and she'd get defensive anytime I asked who she was talking to. One night, while she was in the shower, I looked through her messages. That's when I saw it. Flirty texts with some guy named Ryan, who she'd apparently met during her trip. I confronted her as soon as she got out of the shower. At first, she tried to deny it, but when I showed her the texts, she broke down. "It wasn't anything physical," she insisted. "I just like the attention. I've been feeling so unappreciated, Matt. You don't understand how hard it's been for me." Her words hit me like a gut punch. I didn't believe her, but I didn't know what to do. I asked her to leave, and she retaliated by going on a 3-day bender, drinking and doing Vanessa. When she finally came home, she admitted she had a problem and agreed to go to rehab. At the time, I thought rehab was going to be the turning point. I thought Sarah was finally going to get the help she needed. I didn't realize it was just the beginning of an even bigger nightmare. When Sarah checked into rehab, I felt 2 conflicting emotions, hope and resentment. On one hand, I was relieved that she was finally admitting she had a problem. On the other, I couldn't help but feel bitter that it had taken hitting rock bottom for her to acknowledge it. I thought about the countless nights I'd spent begging her to stop, the fights, the broken promises. It was exhausting. Still, I told myself this was a chance for a fresh start, for both of us. The first few weeks of rehab seemed promising. Sarah called me every night, her voice clearer and steadier than it had been in years. She told me about the group therapy sessions, the one-on-one counseling, and how she was learning to confront the deeper issues behind her addiction. She even apologized for the pain she caused me and the kids. "I'm going to make this right, Matt," she said. "I swear." For the first time in a long time, I believed her. But then, about a month into her stay, things started to change. Sarah's calls became less frequent, and when she did call, she sounded distant, like she was distracted or going through the motions. I chalked it up to the intensity of the program and told myself not to overthink it. She was in rehab, after all. This was supposed to be her time to focus on herself. Then I got a call from one of her counselors. They wanted to discuss Sarah's aftercare plan, specifically the recommendation that she move into a sober living home instead of coming straight home. "It's a crucial step in maintaining long-term sobriety," they said. "She'll have a structured environment, accountability, and support from peers who understand what she's going through." I was blindsided. No one had mentioned this before, not even Sarah. I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. Wasn't the whole point of this for her to come back home and fix what was broken? I wanted to scream at the counselor, but I held back. Instead, I asked to speak to Sarah. When she called me later that night, she acted like it was no big deal. "Matt, this is what they think is best for me," she said, her tone bordering on dismissive. "I need to do this if I'm going to stay sober." "You want me to stay sober, don't you?" Of course I wanted her to stay sober. But I also wanted her to come home and be a wife, a mother, a partner. I wanted her to take responsibility for the mess she'd made, not run off to some halfway house while I stayed behind to hold everything together. Still, I bit my tongue and agreed. I told myself it was temporary, just another step on the road to recovery. Sarah ended up at a place called 405 Recovery in Orange County. It sounded more like a college dorm than a sober living home. Separate houses for men and women, communal dinners, and what Sarah described as a sober sorority and fraternity vibe. She seemed excited about it, which I tried to take as a good sign. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Over the next few weeks, Sarah started pulling away. She called less often, and when she did, our conversations felt strained. She'd talk about her new friends at 405 Recovery, how supportive they were, how much fun they had at their sober outings. She mentioned one guy in particular, Brian, a 26-year-old who'd been through a lot and was really inspiring. My gut told me to ask more questions, but I didn't want to come across as paranoid or controlling, so I let it slide. The turning point came when Sarah started missing her scheduled FaceTime calls with the kids. Jake and Lily would sit by the iPad, waiting patiently, only for Sarah to send a last-minute text saying she was too busy or not feeling up to it. I tried to cover for her, telling the kids that Mommy was working hard to get better. But each time she let them down, I could see the hurt in their eyes. It killed me. One night, after putting the kids to bed, I decided to check Sarah's phone records. I don't know what I was expecting to find. Maybe nothing, maybe confirmation that my gut had been right all along. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. Dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, all hours of the day and night. My heart sank. The next time Sarah called, I confronted her. "Who's Brian?" I asked, my voice trembling with barely contained anger. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "He's just a friend," she said finally. "He's part of my recovery group. We talk sometimes, nothing more." "Nothing more?" I shot back. "Then why are you talking to him more than you're talking to me, or the kids?" She sighed, exasperated. "Matt, you don't understand. Recovery is hard. Brian gets it in a way you can't. That's all this is." I didn't believe her, but I didn't have proof, yet. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. Sarah became more distant, more evasive. She started blaming me for hurting her recovery by pressuring her to spend more time with the family. Every conversation turned into an argument. I felt like I was losing her all over again. The final blow came when I decided to drive down to Orange County unannounced. I told myself it was to surprise her, to show her that I cared. But really, I just needed to know the truth. When I pulled up to 405 Recovery, I saw her sitting on the front porch with Brian. They were laughing, their heads close together, completely oblivious to the world around them. I froze, my stomach twisting into knots. They didn't notice me, and for a moment, I thought about driving away. But then Sarah leaned over and kissed him. Not a friendly kiss, not a platonic kiss, a real kiss. My world shattered. I sat in the car for what felt like hours after I saw Sarah kiss Brian. My mind was racing, and I couldn't process what I'd just seen. I kept telling myself there had to be some kind of explanation, but the image of them together was burned into my brain. It was undeniable. She was cheating on me. Finally, I worked up the nerve to confront her. I got out of the car, slammed the door behind me, and stormed up to the porch. Sarah's head snapped around when she heard the noise, her eyes widening in shock. Brian looked like a kid caught stealing from the cookie jar, frozen and guilty. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. "Matt," Sarah stammered, scrambling to her feet. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I shot back, pointing at Brian. "But I think it's pretty damn obvious, isn't it?" Brian muttered something under his breath and quickly disappeared into the house, leaving Sarah and me alone on the porch. She tried to grab my arm, but I yanked it away. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. "How long have you been screwing around behind my back?" "It's not what it looks like," she said, her voice trembling. "I swear, Matt, it's not." "Don't insult my intelligence, Sarah." I cut her off. "I saw you. I've seen the phone records. Do you think I'm an idiot?" She didn't say anything. She just stood there, staring at me with tears streaming down her face. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You told me you were here to get better," I said, my voice quieter now but no less angry. "You told me you were doing this for us, for the kids. Was that all a lie?" "No," she said quickly. "I mean, I don't know. I've been so confused, Matt. This whole recovery thing, it's been harder than I thought. And Brian, he's been there for me in a way you haven't." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. "In a way I haven't?" I repeated, my voice rising again. "Are you kidding me? Do you have any idea what I've been dealing with while you've been off recovering? Do you know what this has done to the kids? To me?" "I didn't mean it like that," she said, but it was too late. The damage was done. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm again. "Wait," she said, desperation in her voice. "Please, Matt. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Okay? I screwed up. But I love you. I love our family. I want to fix this." I laughed bitterly. "You want to fix this? You're standing here telling me you've been hooking up with some 26-year-old, and now you want to fix this? How am I supposed to trust you, Sarah? How am I supposed to believe a single word you say?" She didn't have an answer. She just stood there, crying and begging me to give her another chance. I told her I needed time to think and walked away. I didn't trust myself to stay any longer. I was too angry, too hurt. I needed to get out of there before I said something I couldn't take back. The drive home was a blur. I kept replaying the scene in my head, over and over. The look on her face when she saw me, the way she tried to justify what she'd done. It was all so surreal. Part of me wanted to believe her, to believe that this was just a one-time mistake. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And she had chosen him over me. When I got home, I poured myself a drink, even though I knew it wasn't the healthiest way to cope. I needed something to take the edge off. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold the glass. I felt like I was going to explode. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the living room, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I called a lawyer and started the process of filing for divorce. I didn't want to do it, but I didn't see any other option. How could I stay married to someone who had betrayed me like this? How could I ever trust her again? A few days later, Sarah called me. She sounded frantic, like she was on the verge of a breakdown. "Matt, please," she said. "Don't do this. Don't give up on us. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. Not after everything that had happened. "It's too late, Sarah," I said. "You made your choice." She cried and begged, but I held firm. I told her that if she really wanted to prove she was serious about getting better, she needed to focus on her recovery and leave me and the kids out of it. She didn't take it well. She accused me of giving up on her, of being just as selfish as she was. I hung up on her. For the next few weeks, we had no contact. I filed for divorce, and she didn't contest it. I thought that was the end of it, that I could finally start moving on. But of course, it wasn't that simple. Nothing about this situation was simple. For the first few weeks after filing for divorce, I tried to focus on keeping life as normal as possible for the kids. Jake and Lily had been through enough. Between Sarah's drinking, her absence while in rehab, and now the separation, I didn't want them to feel like their world was falling apart. But the truth was, my world was falling apart, and I was barely holding it together. I threw myself into work during the day, doing my best to avoid thinking about Sarah. Nights were the hardest. The house felt too quiet without her, and even though I was furious with her, I still missed her. 20 years of memories don't just disappear overnight. I hated myself for still caring, but I couldn't help it. The kids were struggling too. Jake, my oldest, had a breakdown one night while I was tucking him into bed. He started crying and asked, "Why doesn't Mommy want to come home? Did we do something wrong?" It was like a knife to the heart. I reassured him as best I could, telling him that none of this was his fault and that Mommy was trying to get better. But he looked at me with these big, tear-filled eyes and said, "You always told us family doesn't give up on each other, Dad. So why are you giving up on Mommy?" I didn't know what to say to that. How do you explain something like this to a 9-year-old? I ended up sitting on the edge of his bed for an hour, holding him while he cried. It was one of the hardest moments of my life. Lily, on the other hand, was trying to fix things in her own innocent, 6-year-old way. Every time I dropped them off or picked them up during Sarah's visitation window, Lily would grab our hands and physically push us together. "Now kiss," she'd say, giggling like it was some kind of game. Sarah would smile awkwardly, and I'd force a laugh, but inside, it killed me. Sarah, for her part, seemed to be trying. She FaceTimed the kids every night and sent me texts saying she loved me and was working on herself. At first, I ignored her messages. I was still too angry, too hurt. But as the weeks went on, I started responding, if only for the sake of the kids. Our conversations were polite, even friendly at times. I could see glimpses of the Sarah I'd fallen in love with, and it made me wonder if there was still a chance for us. Then, about a month after I caught her with Brian, I found out she was still in contact with him. I only discovered this because I checked her phone records again. I know it wasn't the most ethical thing to do, but my trust in her was completely shattered. Sure enough, there were dozens of calls and texts to Brian, some as recent as the week before. When I confronted her about it, she admitted it immediately. "I wasn't hiding it," she said, as if that made it better. "Brian's been struggling with his sobriety, and I care about him. I didn't want to just abandon him." "You didn't want to abandon him?" I snapped. "Do you even hear yourself, Sarah? You're putting his needs above your family's again. Do you even realize how much damage you've done?" She swore up and down that she had no romantic feelings for Brian anymore, that she only kept in touch because she was worried about his mental health. "He's been calling me, saying he's going to hurt himself," she said. "What was I supposed to do, ignore him?" "Yes, Sarah," I yelled. "That's exactly what you were supposed to do. You can't save him, and it's not your job to try. Your job is to focus on your own recovery and rebuild the trust you destroyed. But instead, you're still lying to me, sneaking around and prioritizing him. How am I supposed to believe you want to fix this?" She started crying and promised me that she'd cut off all contact with Brian. She said she realized now how much it was hurting me and the kids, and she swore it wouldn't happen again. "I just want to fix things, Matt," she said. "I love you. I love our family. Please don't give up on us." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. But I didn't. Not completely. Still, I decided to give her one last chance. For the kids, if nothing else. Over the next few weeks, Sarah seemed to be making an effort. She stopped texting Brian, as far as I could tell, and she was more present during her visitation time with the kids. She even started going to therapy on her own, which was something I'd been asking her to do for years. She told me she was working on herself, and I could see glimpses of that in the way she interacted with us. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was only doing it because she thought it was what I wanted to see. It felt performative, like she was checking boxes instead of genuinely trying to rebuild our relationship. And every time I started to let my guard down, I'd remember the look on her face when I caught her with Brian. That memory was like a wound that wouldn't heal, no matter how much time passed. The turning point came 2 weeks ago. Sarah and I were sitting on the couch after the kids had gone to bed, talking about what it would take for us to reconcile. I told her I needed transparency, honesty, and a commitment to putting our family first. She nodded and said she understood, but then she asked, "What about you, Matt? Do you have anything you need to come clean about?" The question caught me off guard. For a moment, I considered telling her about Erica, about the emotional affair I'd had while she was spiraling, but I decided against it. What good would it do now? Sarah had hurt me far worse than I'd ever hurt her. Besides, I wasn't the one who had betrayed her trust, not like this. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I've been honest with you this whole time." She looked at me for a long moment, like she didn't believe me, but she didn't push it. Instead, she leaned in and kissed me. It was our first kiss in months, and it felt strange. Not bad, exactly, but not the way it used to. It felt like two people clinging to a memory rather than something real. As I drove home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what Jake had said. "You always told us family doesn't give up on each other." I wasn't sure if I was holding on because I still loved Sarah, or because I didn't want to let my kids down. The kiss lingered in my mind for days. It was supposed to be a moment of reconnection, but it only left me more confused. I couldn't figure out if I kissed Sarah because I still loved her, or because I didn't want to feel like a complete failure. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I even knew what love meant between us anymore. Was it real? Or was it just the residue of 20 years together and the fear of starting over? Over the next week, things started to feel different. Sarah was texting me more, checking in during the day, and asking how the kids were doing. She FaceTimed them every night without fail, and when she saw them in person, she seemed genuinely happy, more like the mom they remembered. For a moment, I let myself think, maybe she's finally turning a corner. But then came another gut punch. It was a Saturday night, and I was folding laundry after the kids had gone to bed. My phone buzzed on the counter. When I picked it up, there was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You need to know the truth about Sarah and Brian. She's still talking to him. She's lying to you." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, the blood rushing in my ears. Before I could respond, another message came through. "I'm one of Brian's friends. I've seen the messages. She's still in love with him." I felt sick. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as some prank or bitter ex-addict stirring the pot. But the other part of me, the part that had seen this pattern play out over and over, knew better. Sarah had promised me she'd cut off contact with Brian. She'd sworn she was committed to rebuilding our family. And now this? I called the number, my heart pounding. It went straight to voicemail. The next morning, I confronted Sarah. I didn't tell her about the text messages right away. I wanted to see if she'd come clean on her own. "Have you been in contact with Brian?" I asked, my tone as calm as I could manage. Her face immediately tensed, and she started fidgeting with her hands, a dead giveaway. "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Don't lie to me, Sarah," I said, my voice sharpening. "I need the truth. Right now." She hesitated, looking down at the floor. "Okay, fine," she finally admitted. "He called me a couple of times last week, but I didn't call him back, Matt. I didn't want to get involved again." "Bullshit," I snapped. "Don't play dumb with me. I got a text from someone last night, someone who knows Brian. They said you're still talking to him, that you're still in love with him. So don't stand here and tell me it's just a couple of calls." Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, I thought she was going to deny it. But then she broke down, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she sobbed. "I didn't ask for any of this, Matt. I care about him. Okay? He was there for me when I was at my lowest. I thought I could just walk away, but I can't. I don't know how. Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. I stood there, staring at her, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. So what are you saying? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That you're in love with him? That you're choosing him over us? No, she said, shaking her head. It's not like that. I love you, Matt. I love our family. But what, Sarah? I interrupted, my voice rising. You can't have it both ways. You can't keep stringing me along while you're pining for some 26-year-old kid. That's not how this works. She didn't respond. She just stood there, crying, while I felt the last remnants of my patience snap. I'm done, I said finally. I can't do this anymore, Sarah. You've been lying to me since the day you got back from rehab. I've given you chance after chance, and you've thrown every single one of them away. I don't even know who you are anymore. Please, Matt, she begged, reaching for my hand. Don't do this. I'll cut him off for good this time. I swear. Just give me one more chance. I pulled my hand away. I already gave you one more chance. And another. And another. I can't keep doing this. I won't. I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, sobbing. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house with her any longer. That night, I sat in my car outside my mom's house, staring at the divorce papers I'd printed weeks ago but hadn't signed yet. Part of me wanted to tear them up, to believe that Sarah could still change. But another part of me, the part that had been lied to, betrayed, and taken for granted, knew it was over. I thought about Jake and Lily, about the promises I'd made to them and the lessons I'd tried to teach them about family and forgiveness. I thought about the life Sarah and I had built together, the good times and the bad. And I thought about myself, about the toll this had taken on my mental health, my self-esteem, and my ability to trust. By the time the sun came up, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to fight for Sarah anymore. I was going to fight for myself and for my kids. The next morning, I called my lawyer and told her to finalize the divorce. It was like ripping off a Band-Aid, quick, painful, but necessary. I'd been sitting on the decision for weeks, hesitating because I didn't want to hurt the kids or let go of the hope that maybe Sarah would wake up one day and fight for us. But after the last conversation, after hearing her admit she couldn't let Brian go, I knew there was nothing left to fight for. When I told Sarah I'd filed, she didn't react the way I expected. She didn't scream, cry, or try to argue. She just stood there, staring at me with this blank, hollow expression. If that's what you want, she said quietly. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her this wasn't what I wanted, that none of this was what I wanted, but I didn't. What was the point? She'd made her choices, and I was done paying the price for them. The kids, of course, were a different story. Jake and Lily didn't take the news well. I tried to explain it to them as gently as I could, telling them that Mommy and Daddy weren't going to live together anymore, but that we both still loved them very much. Jake looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "You promised, Dad. You said family doesn't give up on each other." His words broke me. I didn't have the heart to tell him that sometimes family does give up. When the damage is too deep, when the trust is too broken, when staying together hurts more than walking away. Instead, I just hugged him and told him I was sorry. Lily didn't say much. She just cried and clung to my leg, like she was afraid I was going to disappear too. I spent the rest of the night reassuring them that nothing would change between us, that I would always be there for them no matter what. But deep down, I knew that wasn't entirely true. Divorce changes everything, no matter how hard you try to shield your kids from it. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, custody arrangements, and awkward exchanges with Sarah. We agreed on a 50-50 custody split, which meant I'd have the kids half the week, and she'd have them the other half. It was a fair arrangement, but it didn't feel fair. Nothing about this felt fair. Sarah moved into a small apartment near her sober living home. She claimed it was to stay close to her support system, but I couldn't help but wonder if it was also to stay close to Brian. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. In the meantime, I focused on creating a sense of stability for Jake and Lily. I redecorated their bedrooms, letting them pick out new bedding and posters to make the space feel like their own. I started cooking more, even though I'd never been much of a cook. I signed Jake up for soccer and Lily for dance classes, hoping the activities would give them something positive to focus on. But no matter how hard I tried to keep things normal, the cracks were still there. Jake became quieter, more withdrawn. He stopped asking about Sarah, which worried me even more than when he wouldn't stop asking about her. Lily, on the other hand, started acting out, throwing tantrums over the smallest things, refusing to eat dinner, and insisting on sleeping in my bed every night. I brought it up in therapy, but the counselor didn't have any easy answers. It's going to take time, she said. Kids process divorce differently, and their reactions can change from week to week. The best thing you can do is be consistent and let them know they're loved. I tried to take her advice, but it wasn't easy. Every time I saw the pain in their eyes, I felt like I was failing them. One day, about a month after Sarah and I officially separated, she called me out of the blue. Her voice was soft, hesitant, completely different from the defensive tone she usually used when we talked about custody or logistics. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, "about everything. About us." I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. "I know I've screwed up, Matt, more than I can even begin to explain. And I know I've hurt you and the kids in ways I can't ever take back. But I want you to know, I really am trying. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I am. I've been going to therapy every week. I've been staying sober. I've been thinking about what I want, what I really want." "And what do you want, Sarah?" I asked, my voice calm but guarded. "I want my family back," she said. "I want us to try again. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. For the kids. For us." For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe her, to take her at her word and start over. But the other part of me, the part that remembered the lies, the betrayal, the months of fighting, couldn't ignore the reality of what she'd done. "I don't know if I can do that, Sarah," I said finally. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll prove it to you, Matt. Just tell me what I need to do." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I don't know, Sarah. I don't have the answers right now. All I know is that I need time. And so do the kids." She was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," she said finally. "I understand. But I'm not giving up, Matt. Not on you. Not on the kids. I'm going to fight for us." After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she was finally ready to take responsibility and make things right. But I also knew that love wasn't enough. Not anymore. For now, I decided to focus on what I could control. Being the best dad I could be, taking care of myself, and finding a way to move forward, whether Sarah was part of that future or not. I wanted to believe Sarah when she said she was going to fight for us, for the kids. But deep down, I think I knew it was just another promise she couldn't keep. Still, I gave her space to prove me wrong. I didn't push her or question her every move. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd take the opportunity to show me that she was serious about changing. But within a few weeks, the cracks started to show. It began with the kids. Jake and Lily started coming home from Sarah's visits complaining that she didn't feel good, or that she was too tired to spend time with them. Jake told me that she would sit on the couch staring at her phone while he and Lily played by themselves. Lily, in her innocent 6-year-old way, said, "Mommy smells funny sometimes." I knew what that meant. Then came the missed visitation days. Sarah would call last minute with some excuse, a migraine, car trouble, a scheduling mix-up. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt, but it quickly became clear that she wasn't prioritizing the kids. She wasn't prioritizing anything except herself. One night, she showed up to drop the kids off an hour late. I opened the door and immediately smelled the alcohol on her breath. She was wearing sunglasses, even though it was dark outside, and she was slurring her words as she tried to explain why she was late. "Sarah," I said, my voice firm but calm, "are you drunk?" "What? No," she snapped, stumbling slightly as she adjusted her bag. I had a drink with dinner. That's all. Don't start lecturing me, Matt." I didn't argue with her in front of the kids. Instead, I helped Jake and Lily inside and told Sarah we'd talk later. But when I closed the door, I felt a familiar wave of anger and frustration. She wasn't even trying anymore. Over the next few weeks, Things went downhill fast. Sarah's drinking became more obvious, and I started hearing rumors that she was using again. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew better than to dismiss it. One day, while the kids were at school, I decided to stop by her apartment unannounced. When I knocked on the door, it took her a full 5 minutes to answer. When she finally did, she looked like a mess. Her hair was greasy, her clothes were wrinkled, and her eyes were bloodshot. "What are you doing here?" she asked, clearly annoyed. "I came to check on you," I said, stepping past her into the apartment. The place was a disaster. Empty bottles littered the countertops, and there were cigarette butts in an ashtray on the coffee table. But what really caught my attention was the little baggie of white powder sitting next to her purse. "Sarah, what the hell is this?" I asked, holding up the baggie. Her face went pale. "It's not mine," she said quickly. "Don't lie to me." I shouted. "You promised me you were done with this. You swore you were clean." "I'm trying, Matt," she yelled back, tears streaming down her face. "But it's hard, okay? You don't understand how hard it is." "You're right," I said coldly. "I don't understand. Because I'm too busy cleaning up the mess you've made of our family to go on binges with my loser friends." She slapped me across the face. Hard. For a moment, I just stood there, stunned. Then I turned and walked out the door. I didn't even bother saying goodbye. That night, I called my lawyer and started the process of filing for full custody of the kids. I couldn't trust Sarah to take care of them, not when she was drinking and using again. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. When Sarah found out, she lost it. She showed up at my house unannounced, banging on the door and screaming that I was stealing her kids. I opened the door just enough to step outside and block her from coming in. "You need to leave," I said firmly. "Not until you give me my kids back," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You're drunk, Sarah," I said. "You can't even take care of yourself right now, let alone Jake and Lily. This isn't about punishing you. It's about protecting them." She kept screaming, but I didn't budge. Eventually, she got in her car and drove off. I called the police to report her, hoping they'd pull her over before she hurt herself or someone else. Over the next few weeks, I took steps to make sure Sarah couldn't use her possessions to fund her habits or enable her lifestyle. I sold her car, her jewelry, even her designer handbag. I knew she'd hate me for it, but I didn't care. The money went straight into an account for the kids, and it gave me peace of mind knowing she wouldn't sell her things for a dose, or for her boyfriend. Sarah, of course, was furious when she found out. She called me, screaming about how I'd ruined her life, and how I had no right to sell her stuff. I hung up on her. I was done trying to reason with someone who couldn't see past her own selfishness. Eventually, the court granted me full custody of Jake and Lily. Sarah was allowed supervised visitation, but she rarely showed up. When she did, she was distant and distracted, more interested in her phone than the kids. I tried to shield them from her behavior as much as I could, but it wasn't easy. Jake started asking why Mommy didn't want to spend time with them, and Lily cried every time Sarah canceled a visit. One day, Jake came to me with a drawing he'd made at school. It was a picture of our family, me, him, Lily, and Sarah. But Sarah was drawn in the corner, far away from the rest of us, with a sad face. "Why does Mommy look sad in your picture?" I asked gently. "Because she doesn't want to be with us," he said matter-of-factly. His words broke my heart. I hugged him tightly and told him that Mommy loved him, even if she didn't always show it. But deep down, I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. It's been 6 months since I was awarded full custody of Jake and Lily. In some ways, life has gotten easier. The constant fights with Sarah are over, and the kids have settled into a routine with me. But in other ways, it's been the hardest time of my life. Watching Sarah spiral out of control and knowing I can't fix her has been a kind of grief I wasn't prepared for. I lost my wife long before the divorce, but accepting it has been an uphill battle. Sarah, predictably, didn't stick to the supervised visitation schedule. At first, she'd call or text, making excuses for why she couldn't come. Eventually, she just stopped showing up altogether. For a while, Jake would sit by the window on visitation days, waiting for her to pull up in the driveway. "Maybe she got stuck in traffic," he'd say, trying to convince himself. But after a few weeks, he stopped waiting. He stopped asking about her, too. Lily took longer to accept it. She'd ask me almost every night, "Why doesn't Mommy want to see us anymore?" It's the kind of question that no parent ever wants to answer. I told her the truth, as gently as I could. "Mommy loves you, sweetheart," I'd say, "but she's very sick right now, and sometimes when people are sick, they make bad choices. Will she get better?" Lily would ask, her big, hopeful eyes staring up at me. "I don't know," I'd say honestly. "I hope so. But no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you and Jake. You'll always have me." It's hard to watch your kids lose faith in someone they love. Harder still when that someone is their mother. But I've learned to focus on what I can control, giving them a stable home, being present for them, and making sure they know they're loved. About 2 months ago, I got a call from Sarah's mom. She sounded frantic. "Matt, have you heard from Sarah?" she asked. "We haven't been able to get a hold of her for days." I hadn't heard from Sarah in weeks. After she stopped showing up for visits, our communication became almost non-existent. I told her mom as much, and she let out a shaky sigh. "I'm worried about her," she said. "She's been hanging out with some bad people. I think she's using again." I wanted to tell her I wasn't surprised, but what was the point? Instead, I just said, "I hope she's okay. Let me know if you hear anything." That night, I lay awake in bed, thinking about Sarah. Despite everything she'd done, a part of me still worried about her. I didn't want her to die. I didn't want Jake and Lily to grow up without a mother. But I also knew that I couldn't save her. She had to want to save herself, and it was clear that she wasn't there yet. A week later, Sarah's mom called me again. They'd found her. She'd been arrested for possession of and public intoxication. She was being held in jail, awaiting a court date. When I told the kids, I kept it vague. I said Mommy had gotten into some trouble and needed help, but that she was safe. Jake just nodded, like he'd been expecting it. Lily cried and asked if we could go see her. I told her no. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew it was the right one. Since then, Sarah has called a few times from jail. I've answered a couple of her calls, mostly to hear what she had to say. She's promised me, once again, that she's going to change. "This was the wake-up call I needed," she said during one call. "I'm going to get clean, Matt. I'm going to get my life together." I've heard it all before, so I didn't respond. She asked about the kids, and I told her they were doing fine. She asked if she could write them letters, and I said yes. As much as I want to protect Jake and Lily from her chaos, I also don't want to completely sever their connection to her. She's their mother, for better or worse, and I know they still love her. The kids have been in therapy since the divorce, and it's been helping. Jake is starting to open up more, talking about how he feels instead of bottling everything inside. Lily is still struggling, but she's getting there. She's stopped blaming herself for Sarah's absence, which is a huge step forward. As for me, I'm still a work in progress. Some days are easier than others. I've been going to therapy, too, trying to process everything that's happened and figure out how to move forward. I've realized that I spent so many years trying to save Sarah that I lost myself in the process. Now, I'm learning how to focus on my own happiness for the first time in a long time. A few weeks ago, I decided to sell the house. It's filled with too many memories, both good and bad, and I think we all need a fresh start. I found a smaller place closer to my mom's house, with a big backyard for the kids to play in. Jake and Lily were sad at first, but once I showed them the new house and told them they could help decorate their rooms, they got excited. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting. I'll always remember the good times I had with Sarah, and I'll always wish things had turned out differently. But I've learned that sometimes, loving someone means letting them go. To anyone listening this who might be in a similar situation, here's my advice. Don't lose yourself trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You can love them, you can support them, but at the end of the day, they have to want to change. And if they don't, you owe it to yourself, and to your kids, if you have them, to walk away. It's not easy. In fact, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. But I know now that it was the right thing. For me. For Jake and Lily. And, hopefully, for Sarah. I still hope she gets clean one day. I still hope she finds peace. But for now, my focus is on the life I'm building with my kids. A life filled with stability, love, and hope for a better future. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Cheating Storytelling for more gripping real-life tales. Catch you in the next video.